Selected parts from the book One Life is Not Enough, written by Shri K. Nator Singh. Part 15. My travels during 1964 were, by any count, impressive. The West German government invited me to visit their country. They laid out the red carpet, first class air travel, lodgings in good hotels, and a liaison officer to escort me everywhere I went. I arrived in Bonn on 5th July and, out of courtesy, I called on Ambassador P. A. Menon. His first question was why I had not informed him earlier of my coming to Bonn. I told him I was a guest of German government with two others, all members of the decolonization committee. Neither I nor the permanent mission saw any reason for troubling the ambassador. It was an unpleasant encounter. I had last been in Germany in December 1952. Then the ravages of war had been very evident. By 1964, the workaholic Germans had rebuilt most of their war devastated country. The eyesore was the forbidding Berlin Wall built in 1961, one more unfortunate whim of Nikita Khrushchev. Cologne looked different from what it had been in 1952. The cathedral had been repaired and the bridge over the Rhine River had been rebuilt. Berlin too had a new look. No war debris, no pedestrians with torn coats and worn shoes. The hotels were doing well. After a few days, I could not but help conclude that hardly any Germans had been Nazis. Not one I spoke to seemed to be aware of the concentration camps. Here was mass amnesia on an unprecedented scale. Hitler's name was never mentioned. I was not going to miss the Berlin Sports Stadium where the 1936 Olympic Games had been held. I asked the guide if she knew that Hitler had refused to shake hands with Jesse Owens, the greatest athlete at the time, because he was black. She feigned ignorance. I also paid visit to East Berlin. Access was restricted by the Berlin Wall. I was keen to go to Bad Godesberg, where Chamberlain had met Hitler on 22nd September 1938. The meetings had been held at Hotel Dresden. I also did a touristy round of Hotel Petersburg, where Chamberlain and his party were put up. The Rhine flowed calmly as the fate of Europe was being decided. Both establishments were kept as they were in 1938, including the bees colored table. I had read enough history to know that on this very spot, 26 years earlier, Hitler had humiliated the British Epizer by telling him what he intended to do Czechoslovakia. At the Dresden Hotel, history was not only made, it was also given a beating. The most pleasant part was a day spent in Heidelberg, situated on the left bank of the Neckar. It was one of the most picturesque places I have visited. Its university is the oldest in Germany. It gained fame in the 19th century for the students' dueling competitions. I bought a copy of Goethe's Faust. On 3rd July, I left for a round the trip London, Rome, Moscow, Delhi, Bharatpur. In Delhi, I spent 45 minutes with Indira Gandhi. Her father had died a few months earlier. In January 1964, Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit had written to me about a stroke her brother had suffered. Her concern for his ill health was genuine. The fortunes of the Nehru family had also changed. Lal Bahadur Shastri had succeeded Nehru and appointed Swarn Singh as Minister for External Affairs. He could have given the job either to Indira Gandhi or to Mrs. Pandit, but both would have overshadowed him. Mrs. Pandit had retired to Dehradun, where she was working on her autobiography, The Scope of Happiness. I got to Bharatpur on the 10th and saw Kakaji and Maji after 3 years. I had sent my father the Forester book. He was very pleased and had marked portions of it. In the next leg of my journey, I stopped in Singapore and then in Suva, the capital of Fiji, where, to the discomfort of the British governor, I asked if he would be the Mountbatten of Fiji. The country became independent 3 years later. I spent 2 memorable days in Honolulu and came back to New York via San Francisco. In the 1965, the Security Council had several debates on Kashmir. In the debate held in July, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto made an offensive and abusive speech and called Jawaharlal Nehru names. We in the mission, including Ambassador Parthasarathi, felt enough was enough. If Zulfikar Ali Bhutto used similar language the next day, the Indian delegation would walk out. It was an unprecedented proposal, but Ambassador Parthasarathi persuaded even the least demonstrative person like Sardar Swaran Singh, the External Affairs Minister, to accept it. Sardar Swaran Singh decided to speak to Lal Bahadur Shastri, whose diplomatic reply was, "Sardar Sahab, you are on the spot. I leave it to your judgment." The next day, when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto spoke along the same lines, the Indian delegation walked out. The matter, Kashmir, wasn't taken up again for a decade and a half. No photograph of the walkout exists. On 7th September 1965, I was about to leave for the UN when the cipher assistant walked into my room. He handed me a telegram, avoiding looking me in the eyes. He said, "Father passed away." I was stunned. It took me a while to gather myself. I informed Ambassador Parthasarathi, who was then in Security Council, and left promptly for India. During the 10-hour flight, I did not sleep a wink. I found it difficult to believe that father was no more. He was just 65. He had been seriously ill only twice in his life. In Bharatpur, the medical facilities were primitive. The local doctors had done all they could, but in vain. I arrived in New Delhi on the morning of 8th September and caught the train to Bharatpur. Memories of father overwhelmed me as I made my way home. Alighting from the train at Bharatpur, I was surprised to see my elder brother Bharat Singh. He had come from Ahmednagar, where he was posted. We had travelled in the same train without meeting even once. My home, Govindniwas, was in mourning. Mother was inconsolable. She had not eaten anything since father had died. I felt even worse because none of us 4 brothers had been with father at the time of his death. I asked myself what had brought on the fatal heart attack. Perhaps it was his worry for my elder brother Girdhar Singh. The Indo-Pak war had started on 6th September and Girdhar was near Sialkot, involved in a lethal tank battle. Girdhar Bhai got to know of father's death 19 days after he had passed away. I recalled so many happy days with father. Since I was the youngest son, he tended me to spoil. He had been tremendously happy at my getting a first division in my BA honors examination and was overjoyed at my making it to the IFS. I had spent 2 days with him only 6 weeks prior to his death. I recalled him waving to me as the Frontier Mail pulled out of the station. It had never occurred to me then that I would never see him again. I have been prone to tears all my life. Inexpressible joy and sorrow turn into tears. So do states of helplessness or despair. My incommunicable loneliness haunted me for a long time. My world had collapsed. I had lost my bearings. My main anchor in life had disappeared. 49 years later, I still miss him, the quality of his character, the austerity of his life. I remember him and will continue to do so till I become ashes. Thank you very much.